Okay. Here we go. Okay, so there's our agenda along with the announcements or public comment there at the end also. Does anybody have anything to add to the agenda? And if not, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as
So moved.
Currently written. Thank you. Moved by Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Foster. Any discussion? Okay. I'm going to just correct the typo there. It's APU discretionary budget request approval. If there are no objections. Okay, thank you. If there are no objections, then let's see. So we're gonna correct this to row. So Marisol will present the classified professional development item in the action items and presentations. Okay, so the agenda has been amended to just change the presenter for the classified professional development. If there's nothing else, I will declare the discussion closed. And if there are no objections, then the agenda is approved.
Hey, Tom, do you know if Bree Amboy intends on attending?
Good question. Let me write it to her.
She's also on the BAS hiring committee.
All right.
She is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I think what we're going to do is just like she'll be here once the VPAS interviews are done. So if we get to that part of the agenda, I think we should just set it aside and move along and then go back to the APU discretion. Like we just have to go back to that when everyone is here. Okay, so first up is the Student Engagement Task Force. So let's turn it over to Cooper, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that people see the resolutions. I think the council might be seeing it for the first time here. So if you want to go ahead and...
What I was going to do
also, if on that, Cooper, go ahead.
If you prefer to share the screen, that's great too. I've also added it in the comments,
okay.
But whatever's best. So let me just say in advance here, this has been a long uphill process with you know, a lot of different individuals. So this energy isn't that's gonna be behind this resolution is not directed at this council nor anyone here in particular either, nor at the institution, but at institutional issues. Resolution 1, Merritt College Student Engagement Task Force. Whereas the college suffers from a decline in student enrollment, retention, and engagement, whereas the college and her students would benefit from greater knowledge of these issues, their relationship, and how they factor into other issues such as the COVID-19 pandemic, whereas the general student body is not effectively included, informed, nor empowered to understand the participatory governance process or those related to it, whereas the institution is found to have quote-unquote poor communications and operational practices, *1, whereas the quote-unquote poor communication and operational practices have resulted in a standard of short notice, unclear, and unreliable announcements and informational services, whereas student engagement, community building, and a sense of belonging are shown to substantially increase student retention and persistence rates, asterisk 2. Whereas the mission of Merritt College includes, by helping students to attain knowledge, master skills, and develop the appreciation, attitudes, and values needed to succeed and participate responsibly in a democratic society, asterisk 3. Whereas the mission of the California Community Colleges and California Education Code include that California colleges may conduct, to the extent that state funding is provided, institutional research concerning student learning and retention as is needed to facilitate their educational missions, asterisk 4. Whereas the legacy, culture, identity, and brand of Merritt College does so depend on these factors as the very foundations of her spirit. It is therefore resolved that the Merritt College community must come together in formation of a student engagement task force. It is therefore resolved that the task force must be made up of roughly equal parts student and administrative leadership, while further striving to include faculty, classified staff, and general representatives of any departments relevant to student engagement. This includes student services, of course. It is therefore resolved that the task force's initial function will be to source, assess, and analyze data relevant to the subject matter of the task force. It is therefore resolved that community-wide discussion must take place to help contextualize the application of the task force findings during initial and closing phases of the task force. It is therefore resolved that the subject matter of the task force will include the following as primary focuses. I will shift over to the document that is linked in asterisk 5, which includes the A through H here, but also includes their definitions. Student engagement shall be defined by the broadest terms as all aspects of standard student engagement in the
California. We can stipulate all this stuff, like there's a limited amount of time, so you can say that the definitions are included, but let's just go through what's in the results.
Okay, then I'll just quickly note that the citations provided are from the FICMAT report for quotations, the study referencing student engagement or student retention and persistence due to a sense of belonging and community building is the second citation, is a very objective and quality study. Citation 3 is a reference from our own mission statement that was stated, as is the next citation stated is the community college. And then in the definitions, there is a citation from the faculty handbook as well as the classified handbook in regard to student-centered culture and beyond participation to faculty leadership. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. So do you have so in the resolves, right, the initial function, right, so the third resolve, right, will be to source, assess, and analyze the data relevant to the subject matter. Do you have any sort of a timeline in mind for that to happen? And I would assume actually the timeline might depend on the extent to which the task force is going to be doing those things. So what will be the plan for this this task force once it is formed?
I thought that the timeline would be best established by the task force itself, given that there will be different skill sets depending on what individuals volunteer themselves as members, and thusly different things that can be done on different timelines or different information that can be accessed on different timelines. If something more concrete would be needed in advance, what I would do is I would recommend that College Council advise as to timelines. In terms of the longevity of the task force itself, I was thinking that it would be good to have a annual renewal process, where it's reviewed after a 2-semester cycle, after one term, that whether or not it is still necessary to have this extra emphasized focus on these subjects.
Okay, thanks. I'm gonna go ahead and open I will entertain any motions to accept this resolution or whatever before we start to discuss. How do you create a link that highlights text?
Sorry, that is not the substance of the actual thing. That was not meant to be included. It's an amazing thing to me that there's a link that highlights text on the linked page. It's crazy, and I've never seen it.
So what's the pleasure of the council here? Do we want to do we want to essentially authorize the formation of a task force that would be sort of the existence of which would be reviewed on an annual basis as to whether it needs to be an ongoing concern?
This is an example of how you can highlight text with Zoom. The annotation feature up in the top right of view options.
Okay,
cool. Okay, so Brock, sounds like a great plan. Does that mean that you would move for the college council to accept the resolution as written?
Yes, I think definitely this is the kind of thing that can make a huge difference in student engagement. So I think this is a great start.
Thank you. So moved by Drazen.
I second.
Okay, seconded by Lawson. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to point out that in framing the discussion around this, we should discuss the content of all of the resolved parts. And so if anybody has any arguments about any of the whereases, like when a resolution is passed like this, what the body is agreeing to do is all of the things it's therefore resolved. We're not attesting to the truth or completeness or whatever of all of the whereases.
And that's absolutely true and essential to know. I will also contextualize that, though, to the fact that it would be the responsibility of College Council to launch a task force with who is then responsible for these focuses. But so it would be a little different than if this was a resolution that wasn't calling for a body to be launched, in which the council would be directly responsible for each of these focuses. So this is just putting together a project.
Right, and so what the college council is essentially it's an advisory body, advises the president on a number of things. So I think what we would be doing is we would be advising the administration to found this task force, and then the college council can provide oversight or input, or just not even oversight really, but just keep track of what's going on, and then reports would be made at the college council on progress of the task force. So that mechanically, I think that is that would be how it would play out. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And is there any discussion pro or con either way?
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Is this something that's been approved through the ASMC, or is this a certain group of ASMC that's formulated this document to bring forward? And does that matter?
That's a great question. It matters in some senses. This is not a board resolution, but an independent resolution. There are, among the sponsors and signatories at the bottom, 3, in other words, not majority but minority, and that's because it simply hasn't been brought before the board, because this was important to expedite as an independent resolution. There will be other ASMC resolutions coming forth.
When's the next
kind of
when is the
splitting
next
duties.
ASMC meeting?
That would have been next
spring break.
Monday, but I believe that's spring break, so I need to hear back from folks whether they want to.
Yeah,
and
my guess is there won't be an
guess would
official
be
meeting
no.
during spring break. I mean, that is okay.
Probably
So
3 weeks from now.
it probably
Or
like
3
so.
weeks
I
from
guess this
now.
is more of a parliamentary question, from the parliamentary mic, and I guess it would be good to have like the ASMC imprimatur on it as well, because we don't want to, like. I think everyone recognizes the importance of forming a body like this, but hopefully it is reflective of the student body's wishes, right, as represented by the ASMC. So it would be nice to see that the ASMC also approved a resolution like this. So understand about scheduling. The Academic Senate actually has hit a string of, we have something else going on Thursday, so we can't even meet. So understand about scheduling, though. Hopefully, the ASMC will also approve a resolution like this. If not this one, then something similar. At least, go ahead.
That's the issue and why some of these have to be divided, because some of these independent resolutions from myself or other ASMC members, per the Brown Act stance on pre-discussion of things leading to a deliberation, as these have now been pre-discussed through what we do have afforded to us in autonomous independence and action, that we cannot now transfer this to being a board resolution. Could be done vice versa, I do believe, but this has already followed procedure where if this would now included one more ASMC member, the prior organization revolving around it would become a violation. So it can only stay at its current level, though this has been sent to a large number of individuals, both students, faculty, and alike. And I'm sure this sponsor and signatory list will grow immensely by the next couple days.
Okay.
So I just have one question, because I don't think I heard the answer. How many people participated in the development of this document?
That would be strictly 4, but really 6. But as far as this officially states here, 4.
And
2 students and 2 student leaders.
okay, and that's
it's,
representative
of others.
of this complete student body?
If someone wanted to motion for an extension to this time, I could further substantiate this with the survey that we sent out to the entire student body, that is very much calling for exactly this in almost
How many people
unanimous
responded to that?
potency.
Okay.
So far,
I see
43.
Stephanie, you have your hand up, and then Dan Lawson.
In terms of
I just wanted to indicate that the council has 4 ways to take action on something that is presented, and either concur, right, and recommend to the college president to modify the recommendation, to refer an item back to a constituent group or committee for further consideration, and to table or postpone an item. So I just wanted to share the options the council has with respects to the resolution being presented.
I move that we table it.
Okay, hold on. Dan?
Well, based on what Stephanie just said, that was new information, so thank you very much, Stephanie. I would move that we refer this to the ASMC because I would not feel comfortable approving something that applies to specifically one constituent group without that constituent group's, official approval.
Thank you. So we have a motion. We have a motion on the floor. So I don't know. I don't know what the order of operations is here.
So we need to, if that motion that's on the floor needs to be removed. So if they want to, the person to which made that motion was Brock. So if Brock has changed his mind about the motion that's on the floor to pass this resolution as is onto the college president for consideration of a task force, etc., either he can remove or he can proceed. We can proceed with taking a vote. There's also another motion that apparently has made its way onto the floor by Dan and also by Chris. So, but I think we need to go back to the initial motion that was made by Brock.
Okay. Brock, are you still, do you still support your own motion? Okay. Are you?
Well, what's the scope of the ASMC president with regards to making proposals on behalf of the student body as an elected representative of that body? Does he have to have, I mean, I don't know what.
That's an excellent question. So what it is first of all, that's not what I'm doing. This is not on behalf of the ASMC. This is not on behalf of my position as president. And this is not on behalf of the student body. What is allowable is any private citizen, any student, any one of you can put forth a resolution. And an independent resolution that's not a board resolution is as simple as that. So it really boils down to simple representative things like whether or not I'm citing that I am the ASMC president or saying ASMC President Cooper, I'm doing this through this position, which I'm not. I'm doing this as an independent student. Thusly, it's an independent resolution. Thusly, it again violates Brown Act for the ASMC to review this now, given how it's been set up. So I certainly don't have any opposition to it being referred to another board or committee. There will certainly be resolutions on the table of the ASMC in the upcoming meeting. It just doesn't line up. If we had a chief justice or like the city attorney to refer to, that would be helpful. I just don't know how to confirm for y'all that detail.
I call the question on whatever we're doing right now.
Okay.
I'd like to vote on whatever. I plan, if we have to vote if our only choice right now is to vote to approve this, I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Stephanie, I see your hand
up
one more time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to remove my hand. The question is, does Brock wish to remove his motion, or does he wish to just call for a vote and then, depending upon the outcome, we'll proceed forward?
Brock.
Well, gee, let me ask Cooper, would you like to proceed to a vote?
I would refer to the recommendation of the college. I would like to proceed to passing this resolution, but of course I can't make that decision for everybody. The only thing that doesn't make sense to me is referring it to the ASMC. Maybe another one that hasn't followed this procedure. It's just this one is not compatible. If we wanted to table this, if we wanted to move forward with this, and it stood a chance, if we wanted to refer it to any other body, that was
I don't
legal to
I don't
do so,
understand
then
why it's
I
a
would
Brown
be
Act
completely
violation.
fine with any
Like,
of
I
those
don't,
options.
why? So this is a parliamentary question. Why is it a Brown Act?
Be- because these names you see here, Maya Nicholas, ASMC Vice President of Finances, and Jasmine Bledsoe, ASMC Jasmine Bledsoe, or that's a typo. So we have
I'd like
now
to point out that
corresponded and deliberated on
it's
this
not a
subject.
violation of the Brown Act. I mean, if it is a violation of the Brown Act for the ASMC to consider this, then there has already been a violation of the Brown Act. Because if you're saying that a majority of the officers of the ASMC have already discussed this issue outside of official, official meetings, then the Brown Acts have been violated, even if the ASMC never officially considers it. Because if the ASMC is giving their unofficial approval of this through a majority of the board members meeting separate from official meetings, that's a violation of the Brown Act. So if no, wait, I'm not done. So,
No,
and if there has
the
not
of what I'm
been
saying.
a violation of the Brown Act at this
Sorry.
point, there would not be one if the ASMC considered this at a regular meeting where the public could attend.
It has not been in majority, it's been in minority.
Therefore,
It hasn't been a violation, but the behaviors that would make it a violation would become
That's
civil
only
as soon as one more
discussion
person
at a meeting.
entered the
It's not a
discussion.
violation.
Yeah, that's only if it's being discussed outside of the setting of a meeting. So if a few people discuss it, an allowed minority discusses it, and then brings it forward to an official meeting, that's not a Brown Act violation. Right? It's only if it's a certain threshold outside of a meeting that it becomes a Brown Act violation.
Yeah. Doing things at meetings aren't violations of Brown Acts.
Correct.
Well, it should be.
It hasn't been discussed at meetings.
It should be at a meeting of the ASMC, which has met quorum, and where you can actually pass resolutions.
Yeah.
If it's a board resolution, but people can pass independent resolutions. They're real. They'll be very real once I stop being
my point is that this is an ASMC issue. It should be considered by the ASMC before the College Council considers it, in my opinion.
So be it. Whatever everyone sees fit.
Okay, so it sounds like the moment.
And that's not to put you on the spot, Mr. Drazen or Coach
I think
Drazen.
with the fact that there's a motion on the table that's been seconded, I think we should just call for a vote and then proceed with moving forward.
Yep. Okay, so let's.
Tom, can you, or Brock, either one, can you repeat the motion, please?
The motion is to accept the resolution on the student engagement task force. I mean, that's it. Like the full text of the resolution is given. The link to that is given in the chat. So the upshot would be that if we vote in favor of the motion, we'd be voting to form a student engagement task force that would be made up of roughly equal parts student and administrative leadership, while further striving to include faculty, classified staff, and general representatives of any department relevant to student engagement. Task force's initial function will be to source, assess, and analyze data relevant to the subject matter of the task force. The community-wide discussion must take place to help contextualize the application of the task force findings during the initial and closing phases of the task force. And the subject matter of the task force will include the following 8 areas that are listed in the text of the resolution: student engagement, effective communications, announcements, student retention and persistence, student enrollment, campus life, culture, community, empowered inclusion in participatory governance, and honor and support for student representatives and the student senate. So this is not a motion. This is an independent resolution. So it's specifically not been voted on by the ASMC.
I understand that, Tom, this is Lilia, that first it has to be voted through ASMC as a resolution. Also, some of the tasks he's listing, Cooper, those are all part of all of our constituencies, all our participatory governance. We really need to review, everything that's listed there, the roles and responsibilities of data, of communication. I thought we had been working with ASMC in the sense of they've brought up some, important points in the sense of areas that could improve as we went from face-to-face to online. So from what I understand, that it's supposed to be passed by their student government first. And I'm a little bit confused because I thought if I stepped in at a time, I think people were saying he was here on his own, not as an ASMC rep. So I'm a little bit confused. So Cooper, I don't know, maybe I got the tail end of it. So I just want to, make sure that we're being supportive, but at the same time, it would be great also to hear from the other students.
Absolutely. So it's an independent resolution, not a board resolution. Any citizen can submit these. Any student especially can submit these. They don't have to be a member of the ASMC, and they don't have to put it through any particular board. They just have to find a body with the authority to launch said task force, which I'm pretty sure any standing committee has the authority to launch a task force of generally this nature. I do understand your point about this being, generally our goal, our task. I mean this without criticism, but our FICMAT report is identifying most of these issues as exactly where we're suffering. So, I mean, it's substantiated and
so the question's been called. So I'm just going to, I'm gonna do a roll call vote. Starting at the top of the membership list and going down. If you vote yes, you're voting to approve the formation of this task force. If you vote no, you're voting against, you're voting in favor of accepting the resolution. If you're voting no, you're voting, not necessarily to accept the resolution, but then there's another motion for referral. But before we can get to that, we have to do the vote on accepting the resolution as written, as sponsored, as an independent resolution. So Denise Richardson.
Tom, could I just get one clarification before
Sure.
we? So if we vote on this, we're not recommending. We're recommending this to the president.
Yep.
Committee. We're not actually saying form the committee, but if we approve that, we're voting to forward to the president as a recommendation.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Denise Richardson. Is Denise here?
I'm here. I have not had enough time to really look at this. So could you come back to me? I want to take a look at it in the chat.
Sure. Lilia Chavez.
Could you put it back in the chat because it doesn't appear for me since I just came on?
The same for me. Tom, I just came on too. That's why I said I got the tail end.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Michael. So the link is back in the chat there. Chris Foster.
No.
Okay. Thomas Renbarger is voting no. Dan Lawson.
No.
Rose Allen.
I have to abstain. I just got in here.
Okay, abstention. Brock Drazen. You may be muted, Brock.
I vote yes.
Okay. Tashona's not here. Marisol. Marisol Rowe.
Can I abstain?
You can abstain.
Okay.
Abstention. Waduda. Kareem.
No.
Okay. Michael Cooper.
I'm sorry to be a bother, but there is actually no abstaining under Brown Act in public meetings. But those who did not arrive during the initial roll call and quorum would not be
I believe
part
that
of the
both of those
vote
things are
anyways. They would be
incorrect. We can
serving.
return to
I
that
understand
issue
that
if
part
it's
correct. I know the first
determinative.
part I
Can we
just
proceed with the
did.
vote, please? Can we proceed with the vote, please?
Waduda
just got
voted no.
trained on
Michael
this
Cooper,
yesterday.
your vote, please. Okay. Linnea Willis,
Yes.
Derek Ross. Okay, so presently there are 4 no's and 2 yeses, but a number of ask me laters. So,
I'm ready to vote.
okay, Denise Richardson.
I vote no.
Okay, Lilia Chavez.
No.
Okay, Marisol.
No.
Okay, so the vote stands at 2 yes, 7 no. The motion does not carry. There's a second motion by Dan Lawson to refer this to the ASMC.
Second.
Okay, moved by Lawson, seconded by Foster. A discussion.
Call the question.
Okay, the question's been called. So in this case, we're referring this resolution back to ASMC for their approval, and upon their approval, we will take up the resolution again. Denise Richardson. Sure.
Point of clarification. Do
I guess
vote, or
we have to vote on what we want to do. We can't just say that Dan said to do it.
Yeah, so I think it's a motion. I think if it's a motion, we vote on it.
Oh, okay.
Yep, no worries. Denise Richardson.
Okay, my mistake. I thought it was
Yes.
just a 2 motion item.
Lilia Chavez.
Yes.
Chris Foster.
Yes.
Thomas Renbarger votes yes. Dan Lawson.
Yes.
Rose Allen.
You're on mute, Rose.
I'm still abstaining.
Okay. Okay. Brock Drazen.
My understanding from how this was presented is that it wasn't generated through ASMC. So
we can refer things to the ASMC if we discover them ourselves. We could say, we discovered that there's a problem over here that the students should address. We're referring it to the ASMC. Well, it doesn't matter where it originated.
Yeah.
So it's a yes or no. Should we refer it?
Well, I definitely think it's positive for students, so I'll say yes.
Okay. Marisol.
Yes.
Okay. Waduda.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Michael. Okay. Thank you. So the motion carries unanimously with 1 abstention by Rose Allen that we will refer this to ASMC. And I think just in closing, I think there is, I think it's a sympathetic resolution, and I think people on the council do want to pass it, but as it pertains to to students very strongly, we just like to see that approval from ASMC directly. Mm-hmm. So I think that's the reason for the referral as opposed to the immediate approval. Thank you for presenting that, Cooper. I think it's a good idea, and I think I speak for most of the members of the council. That's a good idea, but we would just like to see that approval by ASMC directly as well.
It's beyond common sense material, but all right.
All right, let's move on to the item on classified professional development. So Marisol, I will turn things over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting on behalf of Tashetta. So hopefully our thing is pretty fast. So here we go. Merit Classified Senate recommends working in collaboration with the administrative team and campus community to enhance training for classified by making video training accessible to all classified. Flex Day training provided to classified during our mid-Flex Day was greatly appreciated, but we would like to take a step forward by loading the training we receive on Flex Day in a centralized location upon the Merit website that classified can have access at any time, as training refers to increased efficiency, productivity, and enhance the skill sets for new existing classified. By doing this, onboarding training for new classified will be more effective and accessible by providing AP training, requisition and budget training, contract training, and more. Cross-training and refresher training is accessible to existing employees. Repetitive training at the same procedure during Flex Day will be minimized to leave room to focus on additional training and workshop opportunities for classified, and overall provide an accessible online platform of professional development training modules that all classified can access at any time without having to wait for Flex Day to happen. We believe that this is the first step to create better accessible professional development for all classified, and we request your support as College Council. Thank you.
So ultimately what we're doing is the request is to actually have a section of the Merit website be devoted to classified professional development.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I think it's a very reasonable idea, and I think it will be helpful. Do we want to make a motion to that effect? So I'll entertain a motion. So is there a motion to call the question? To call the question to right? Vote on the motion. So we need a motion first.
Move. I make that
move to establish a classified development portion of the website.
Yeah.
Merit College website. Thank you. Did you want to change the wording at all, Dan?
No, it's perfect.
Okay. So do I have a second for that? Okay, seconded by Cooper. Stephanie.
I just have a question on clarity. Given that we have a professional development webpage now that encompasses the campus's professional development, and you spoke to many of the workshops that are provided on some of those same days, would you want this page to be separate of the professional development webpage that is already established, specifically for classified, or would it be incorporated with?
It will be separate. It will be for us to put on videos in order for us to reference back. So let's say, for example, we get new classified and they need help. At least we'll have that training videos on there for us to always go back and reference ourselves too. Right now, currently, we train each other, but it will be nice if we have our own classified website where we can add any videos. Let's say, for example, a new A&R tech comes on board. At least there's procedures where there's training procedures that we can place on the website in order for that new person, to reference always back to.
Thank you.
Good. Good, thank you for that clarification. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing no one desires to debate, I will declare the discussion closed and call the question. And I think for this one, I think we'll leave it as if there are no objections. And if there are objections, you can state them. But if there are no objections, then the motion to establish a classified staff professional development page is separate from the PDC page, has been passed unanimously. So we will pass that recommendation on to President Johnson. Thank you, everyone, for that. And next up is...
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Marisol, for that. And next up is the APU discretionary budget request approval. So I'll turn things over to Marie for that, Dean Amboy.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My apologies for running a little bit late. In the chat, I just wanted to start by just kind of reminding everybody about our IPB and just really kind of kick off by applauding us for having maintained our calendar, because that was huge, especially as we discussed at our accreditation site visit. So in that, just as a reminder of kind of how we are, the process to get here. In January, we did a lot of the planning. This is now the phase where we are sort of budgeting. And in January, if you recall, we had a joint meeting with the College Budget Committee where we reviewed the APU, the large budget requests. And if you recall, the total budget requested, total resource requests was over 8 million. And we narrowed that down to sort of high level, low level, mid level needs. And then I split up between what appeared to be sort of immediate need and then what was really actually, specific to fiscal year 21-22. When we talk about this budget, we talk about 21-22, but it was clear in the development of the APU and the submission of some of the resource requests that there were some immediate requests that were actually needed. So we sort of pulled some of that out. So I just want to provide you all with just a reminder of that. That was approved and we were supposed to have received our budget then. That actually did not happen until until February 26th. So let me just share the tentative budget, the budget calendar that was approved and adopted by the district. And this is important because it actually plays a role in how much time we as administrators and as a college to be able to really review and have the critical discussions that we would have liked to have. So in our IPB, we actually would have our discretionary budget in January, actually earlier than that. And this, as you can see, did not actually happen. We didn't receive our tentative budget actually until February 26th. And then we had to then turn around, of course, and have our before it could come to this council, to this body, we actually had to review this at the College Budget Committee last week. So between February 26th and March 18th, you can imagine that was not much time. So what we did was we originally prepared on the assumption, we started preparing our budgets early on the assumption that it was going to be the same as last year, meaning we were going to have since it was a hold harmless year, that we would begin at least having the discussions, assuming the funding was the same. And so that actually worked to our advantage because the funding that we received was exactly the same. So what we were given was the same amount as previous years. Let me bring up my presentation so you can see it. So let me work backwards for a second, hang on. Okay, so can you guys see this?
Yes.
You guys.
Discretionary
okay,
Fund 01.
Thank you. Okay, perfect. So this is the discretionary fund that we received for fiscal year 21-22, exactly the same, $805,452. We have approximately 9 cost centers. We actually now have a total of 10 cost centers to split that pie from. This was just so that you guys could kind of see the percentage distribution in terms of how the budgets are split across cost centers. And to give these numbers sort of context for you, here's how they're actually split up. So 601 is the president's office. 631 is the business office. Oh, and the names in parentheses here are actually the folks that are managing that, the cost center managers. So President Johnson is the administrator for the President's Office for Cost Center 601. Lillian Pyers is currently stepping in and doing a phenomenal job to support business office, and that's 631. 641 is the Vice President of Student Services, VP Chavez. And VP Chavez actually oversees two budgets, two cost centers, actually a few cost centers that she's the one that manages. But 641 and 642, the differentiating factor, of course, is that 642 is specific to EOPS and DSPS. 643 is student activities and campus life, and that's Doris Hankins. 651 is the Vice President of Instruction, VP Richardson, and then 652, 53, and 54 are the three divisions, with 652 being Division 2, 653 being Division 1, and then 654 being Division 3. There is a new cost center that's coming for counseling, and that will be managed by cost center. The cost center manager will be Dean Lisa Webb, who's the Dean of Counseling. That's not additional funds. So basically what this means is the original funds that were sort of part of counseling under student services would now just be moved from there and reallocated here. So that's the breakdown. As you can see here, the largest parts of the pie in terms of discretionary fund 1 is really in 601 and 631, which is really the President's Office and the business office. And a lot of this is because within the business office, you see there's components for facilities and equipment. There's a lot of these fixed costs that are just something that we have to pay every single year. So that really spans the entire college. It's also important to note that these two budgets generally do not receive any other funding streams, right? Whereas whereas both student services and instructional side of the house do have some categorical funds that are allotted to us. The President's Office and the business office do not receive any other funds outside of discretionary fund 1. So that's why they have the largest piece of the pie. So what we did as part of the IPB, which I put in the chat, so you guys just to remind yourselves of our process, is before the budget committee actually reviewed to approve this, each of the cost center managers were required to do budget presentations to the committee. And in the past, I just want to let you know, I shifted the process a little bit this year because in the past they had spanned, I think, 2 to 3 days. And I think in many ways, as I reviewed it, we're really sort of built out of a feeling of distrust. It felt like that the process was born out of a distrust between, perhaps the college community and the business office. And I think this time around, what we decided to do was really kind of focus on the process by which we actually received our, determined our budgets. And each of the cost center managers were well aware that we needed to actually work with the folks within our areas and to make sure that we had a reason to justify kind of how we built these budgets. So let me kind of share. I use 654. This is my budget as sort of an example for what has happened. So in Division 3, we have a small little allocation. It's only $33,000, but that's because Allied Health and Public Safety is all CE programs, and because of that, we also have access to other CE funding, and so that's why we have a smaller sort of budget, and that's sort of taken into account in terms of how the allocations are split up. There are 10 programs in our division, all CE programs. They're all, as I said, all eligible for additional funding. And so what we did was we reviewed the APU requests with each of the faculty chairs and program directors. We had one-on-one meetings. Each of the deans actually did this and worked with folks within their division as well to discuss the APU requests, to discuss needs, and then really to kind of look at identifying high-level needs and leveraging other funds. So as you know, there's additional funds that are set to expire this year. Remember, I had said that in the APUs, there were some requests that were really sort of immediate. And then there are some requests that you could tell were really in place for 21-22. So those discussions took place as well, identifying really the high-level needs and leveraging other funds. And then what was really also important for many of the cost center managers was reviewing past expenditure trends, meaning if this was approved in the past and it was sitting in a cost center, in a, for a program, but, for the last few years, but they didn't use it, is there really a need there, et cetera. So those are that's sort of the process that went into place. I'm going to stop right here and actually, because I need to kind of look at the, I want to actually provide you guys with the total budget that was approved. Let me see if the chat, usually in some meetings, the chat allows me, I'm allowed to upload a document to the chat. It's not allowing me to do that, which is unfortunate. So let me do this. I will, what I'll do is I will send this as an attachment to you all for you to see. But this is ultimately the entire discretionary budget that was developed. There are some areas where they were sort of, oftentimes with 601 with the business office, there are some fixed costs, which means there's some costs that are just going to stay the same year after year because they're paying specific funds, they're paying specific bills, et cetera. So that's why you'll see a lot of these sort of be the same. I'm just going to scroll down. You'll be able to see this sort of as an entire document when I send it as an attachment. But this is basically what was submitted to the budget committee. And when we presented by cost center. And so as you can see there in the notes that there's sort of reasons behind why some things may have been budgeted last year, but are no longer being budgeted this year, or why they might not have been in place last year, as in the case of Division 2. For example, they might have these programs may have had some funding from Strong Workforce in the past, but they didn't get, they didn't have it. They don't have it this time around, or whatever the reasons are. They're noted here, and that's why there's a fund in that area this time around. So I think the main thing that we wanted to get across here is that there was really a sort of intentionality around how these budgets were developed. They were not done as sort of like the standard sort of rollover, if you will. They were really done with thought and with intention and with input from our areas. So are you guys back to my the little presentation here? Can you guys see that? Okay, so what the budget committee approved was the discretionary budget was then approved by the budget committee. With the caveat, of course, there was a sort of a note to that. I apologize because I don't have the exact motion. I'll have to pull it when we go back and do the minutes. But the biggest thing that was in discussion there was that, yes, they approved the budget, but because even though each cost center manager was really intentional about how we divvied up the allocations that we received, there was conversation around the fact that our allocations basically stayed the same, like the percentage of the pie. The total amount stayed the same, but so did this, right? And that there was no college-wide discussion around, is this the appropriate percentage? Does this need to be moved over? Are these things, that level discussion was not had, and we acknowledge that. There simply was, as I noted, not enough time between when we actually received the budget and when we had to actually present it to the budget committee and to you all. And so there was a commitment from the leadership team to the budget committee that these conversations would be ongoing and that we would certainly continue to review the budget allocations across the college. So really looking at this from the leadership perspective, looking across all of the different budget areas and leveraging in a way that we have not been able to do in the past. And so that was the commitment that that's what the budget committee had approved the last time. And I'm now presenting it to you all. And I will share, actually, let me stop here and see if there are any questions while I send you all the full on budget that the spreadsheet budget that we will be submitting to the district. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Brock.
Brock here. So last year, I submitted a very detailed budget request in April, which broke down all our budget needs, and we're at 641. And I didn't realize this had already. So this already happened for the next budget year. I didn't have any input at all. I guess I would have to get with my cost center manager to find out what was submitted.
Well, and actually, Brock, for athletics in particular, it's really interesting because there does need to be. It's unfortunate because we kind of had to put our budget model. We had to fit we would have had plenty of time if we actually received the budget in advance and we kind of knew what we were working with. But because we didn't, we're kind of we're kind of working with the district's timeline. But I will say that your athletics is one of those areas that sort of covers that sort of hovers between instruction and student services, and so it is a point of discussion. I just wanted to let you know between the cost center managers, and I'll let them speak for themselves if they want to, kind of share that piece. But it was a point of discussion about how to, maybe leverage funds. Like when we talk about the piece of the pie, some of that really speaks to rather than divvying things up, if we looked at it big picture, could maybe solve some things if we actually looked across cost centers, as opposed to everyone have their own little piece. So, and athletics fits that arena because there's parts of student services that covers ethics. And then there's also sort of there's the instructional, all the courses. And so those are conversations I think that still need to be had at the district level. I mean, at the regional, at the leadership level. But you definitely should have had conversations if you had not already had conversations with your cost center manager about what would be able to be covered for the next fiscal year. I will say that if you review the budget that I'll send right now, a good portion of Dr. Chavez's budget, she only has about 105,000 for students for 641. A large majority of that actually goes to a large percentage of that goes to athletics, simply because you're not receiving funding anywhere else. Things that we can't pay for, the things that you're requiring. You should have those conversations with your cost center manager for sure.
Okay, and as an administrator, I do want to mention that I've mentioned for a long time that SEA funds, student equity and achievement. This is an area where we serve the student population that is the demographic of SEA, and a lot of times I don't understand how those funds are used, to hire a staff assistant for the counseling dean as opposed to directly serving students. So I understand that, we can be budgeted out of any cost center, but the ones that make sense to me are definitely SEA. And then other than that, I don't think, I don't care where it comes from, but I think that's a funding source that applies to the student population we serve.
Yeah. So I did want to make a distinction. Well, first I wanted to say, Tom, I couldn't find very quickly, where college council, if there was everybody here. So I just sent it to you, if you don't mind sending it out to the committee, the document. But Brock, I wanted to say there is a larger discussion that really needs to happen around our categorical funding. And we're trying our best to sort of wrap our arms around that in the budget committee. Right today, I mean, the main point of the approval here is for discretionary Fund 1 only, which is, is a very small piece. It's very small comparative to our entire college budget. But you're right. I think the categoricals piece needs to be reviewed. And I think part of the challenge is that many of us really, I think one of the things that the budget committee has certainly asked for, or I think is sort of training around what these different funding sources actually are. And, we have a new budget committee, so we're working on actually coming back and saying, well, here are these budget streams. Here's what they've been used for in the past. Here's what what's allowable. And then here are the metrics that we're supposed to be achieving with these funds. I don't think that level of discussion, I don't think that's happening. And it's certainly something that we're looking to tackle in the budget committee. And I'm happy to bring that, those discussions back here to College Council if that's something that you would like us to present on. But to your point, you're right. There's just so much of the categoricals piece that we haven't had time to actually evaluate the investments that we've made and determine whether or not they were good investments, should continue, or should we reallocate. And what I'd like to kind of move up, the great thing about us planning in advance is that I'd like to move us away from this whole sort of knee-jerk reaction spending, so to speak, where you kind of get towards the end of the fiscal year and everyone's got funds that need to be spent. I'm trying, we want to, as a college, really kind of move away from that and be intentional about looking across and saying, okay, well, these are need, this is a need here, this is a need here, let's look at all of it. And it would ensure that we don't send any money back, because I can't tell you how frustrating it is to hear, me personally, to hear, we don't have money, and then to know that there are some funds being sent back to the state if we don't spend them. So I think it's really, there's, I think rather than looking at each of these different budgets sort of individually, which is what's been happening, I think we need to just kind of get everyone to start looking at it across. And that's going to take time, because we need time to understand what these budgets are intended for. And so that's a long-winded answer to say I agree, and that process I hope is coming.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. I just saw your note in the chat. Are there any other questions for me? Otherwise, I think this is a discussion I've at this point presented, and I'm not part of College Council, so the motion would need to come from you all. But I'm happy to take any other questions that you may have.
And does anybody have any other questions for Dean Amboy? Brock, go ahead.
No, that was a previous hand.
Oh, okay.
Take it down.
No worries. Anyone else? So I think whatever motion we entertain, I have been privy to some discussion about how exactly the budget was constructed, and there's always because the budget is always tentative, there's always some amount of budget transfer requests that happen. So I think that whatever motion we pass, we should urge department chairs and cost center managers, or anyone who manages a budget as a faculty, to consult with their cost center manager to try and get ahead of any potential budget transfer requests in the upcoming months, so we're ready to go in July. But otherwise, we would be looking for a motion to approve the budget that was developed by the cost center managers and reviewed by CBC. Neem, go ahead.
I have a logistical question. Given that we don't have a budget manager or a VP of administrative services, who is actually submitting the budget to the district and loading the budget?
So this is, all due credit really goes to Lillian Pyers, who has done a phenomenal job of, has been the one that's been focused on, has been having the communication with the district, and ultimately will be the one, we're trying to not have it all on her. So there's a lot of cross training that needs to happen with cost center managers. There are things that cost center managers can and should be doing that the business office is currently doing. And so we need to kind of do some of that cross training. So what and Lillian can kind of speak to her. Lillian, please jump in. But what the district, I believe, is going to do is load the budget to sort of our load our position control, basically our salaries first, and our discretionary is going to go basically to like our 5A5, so to speak. I mean, whatever's not, you know, they'll load it the way that we've submitted, but anything else will kind of go into our catch-all, and then we would actually do the budget transfers to where we need it to go. So there, in the past, what has happened is all of that was kind of laid on the one, it was originally the role of the district. The district has now pushed that back to the college. And even though I think our business office is doing a phenomenal job, this really needs to, some of that really needs to be the responsibility of the cost center manager to kind of be reviewing the budget regularly. And so it's going to be a sort of those responsibilities are going to get split and distributed across several folks, Neem. But the short end of it is that really it'll be Lillian. So Lillian, if you wanted to share a little bit more.
No, you said it right. So what started off with this position control. So that is actually going to have a second round of position control edits if we need to. We did the discretionary budget and that was distributed to cost center managers. They submitted it to me. I compiled it all into one spreadsheet and submitted to the district on time. So from there, they will go ahead and load it the way we have it. So that's basically it so far.
Can I just say something? Because I feel like this is really important to note. The position control, for as long as I've been at Peralta, the position control at Merit, and if I could say this in a safe space, has been challenging, has been sort of a mess. There's, you know, with the rise of the new division, you know, Division 3 wasn't always around. So there were faculty that were still, loaded into Division 1 or in Division 2's cost center, not in Division 3. It was sort of a mess and really kind of made it challenging with sort of building the budget at the college level. And so between, and this is really, I have to give kudos to our unsung heroes. So Lillian and Berenice did really a heavy lift in concert with, certainly with the cost center managers, but to actually clean up the position control once and for all, meaning to put everyone where they're supposed to go in the cost centers that they're supposed to be in, so that we could actually identify real, like, what is the true salary savings? And for a long time, that was a question that was difficult to answer because position control was not clean. And, I'm saying this as a context to David's point in the chat that, we were able to receive approval to hire the first 8 positions in our faculty hiring prioritization, and then 4 in our classified hiring prioritization because we did that work. I mean, it was sort of clean. It was like, here's the funds. We've identified it. We know where it's coming from. Everything's moved where it needs to be. And here's the justification for how we're actually going to pay for this. And because it was done in that manner, the district was able to approve it quite quickly. I mean, there's only 2 in the district that have actually submitted. The other 2 colleges have not even submitted their lists yet. So I want to say that because this is huge, just from a process perspective, just how much has happened. And I want to call that out and just really kind of applaud the folks that have sort of championed that along. And just say that all of this has what's given rise to us being able to then, all of that to say that this process following our model, that it works. So anyway, that Neem, did that answer your question? Was that sufficient? Okay.
Okay.
Stephanie.
I wanted to. Can I add something for a second?
So Stephanie had her hand up. So
sorry. Yeah, it is up. I'm sorry. Let me put my
Stephanie, then Chris. Okay. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Chris, if your item is related to what Marie and Neem were talking about, I will let you go first because mine is actually separate of this.
Okay, well, it's very quick. I just wanted to say that I've been working with Lillian as well in identifying, we have CARES money, lottery money, Parcel tax money, I'm trying to get more, and also looking into Measure G because it seems like Merritt got a very small amount of that. For example, for the library project, so I'm working on it. It's been, baby steps for me because we don't have, someone that we can call on all the time. Lillian's terribly busy. So we are working through the process. And just as soon as I know exactly how much money I can spend, I will be contacting you, Neem, and the other chairs to say exactly what we can do right now. That's all.
Okay, thank you for that, Dean Foster. Stephanie, go ahead.
So I just, as someone who has been brought on to help in the facilitation of cycles and processes, I want to urge all those in attendance of this meeting and management that part of the difficulty is our ability to document the processes to which we engage in. And Marie, I believe you indicated that a large reason to needing those presentations was because of a level of distrust. And quite honestly, that is because of the level of transparency that is always being asked of with respects to building budgets and identifying sort of where and how things are, where dollars are being applied, how dollars are being spent, in what capacity was it justified, et cetera. And so the issue that I raised today is, yes, this is a tentative budget. Yes, we went through a process of development with, having a resource request list to work upon with respects to building these budgets. But again, the dialogue really does need to be in existence with respects to, okay, who is needing what, when, why, documenting the purpose of that, indicating sort of what is it that we are choosing to fund for the purpose of, next year's cycles, meaning that if we had this very robust APU that presented, resource requests, if we are actually being funded, or supported on those resource requests, is it being documented? Are folks aware of it? Is it something that is transparent and understood so that when we begin developing our budgets again, we know, how things took place and when, and ultimately what dollar amount was received. And so I say that with anything that we articulate, as Tom was saying, with regards to the transfers that may take place, et cetera, that those are well documented, collected, and sort of compiled with this tentative budget to understand the movement of the money, and that it doesn't necessarily exist in siloed pockets of the different cost center managers with the lack of understanding and the collaboration, as Marie, you mentioned, across the board, right? Making sure that we understand, that there was money, say, in the president's office that was no longer needed, that could be shifted to, say, student services, or, monies that was in Division 1 that could be, moved to another discipline that, was in need of it more, something to that effect. And just making sure that that is well documented and articulated.
Stephanie, thank you for that point. I will say that the budget is an ongoing document, that when we prepare like, everyone submits kind of their plan. And I have very rarely ever seen a budget be spent exactly as it was intended to. I mean, if it was, that's the reason why there are so many budget transfers. I will say this is a personal flaw that I see in our own integrated planning and budgeting, is that we don't actually have an evaluative process. And that's, I think, really what you're kind of speaking to, is that it's one thing to kind of plan, and we can talk about the process to plan. But what it sounds like is, and you're right, because it's missing, is a process by which we actually evaluate whether or not the investments we made were any good, or if they were the appropriate investments, the best investments, if they should continue. Should we, those kinds of discussions. I do agree with you, and unfortunately, and I agree with you because having managed several large budgets, for Peralta and at Merit specifically, that's been the biggest challenge, is taking a step back and saying, hang on, before we figure out what we do with this next pot of money, can we take a minute to actually stop and see how well we've actually done with our existing funds first? So that, I think, to the point that you just made, I think that evaluative process really needs to be built in. It needs to be called out. And I think it's part of the ongoing conversation that the budget committee actually approved. In the last slide, which I will share out also, it did say that these ongoing discussions about how we allocate across college, I can see a lot of those conversations coming into play when we have those conversations. But I think, to your point, you're right. We don't have, we don't take a moment to actually evaluate whether or not we evaluate our investments. That's actually that's not built in our cycle. If you look at our integrated planning and budgeting model, it's not, the evaluative process is not really built in.
Okay. All right, thanks for that. I'll call on you in a sec, Cooper, but I just noticed that the agenda says we're ending at 4:30 and it's 4:32. Can I get a motion to extend the meeting to 5 o'clock?
So moved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Lawson, seconded by Drazen. If there are no objections, the meeting will adjourn at 5 p.m. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Go ahead, Cooper.
Where is this meeting publicly posted on our website? I can't seem to find any
This meeting is in College
agenda
Council.
or anything else of that sort. And if there was no public posting,
by the way,
then this
if the meeting is not
would be
posted on the
void.
college website, that is a violation of the Brown Act, but that does not make the meeting void.
There was an announcement sent out via Merit announcements on Friday around 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. That's not the website. So this meeting is in violation of Brown Act, it seems. So I withdraw myself from it. I'm going to continue on as an observer.
That's not how the Brown Act works.
I would
and also,
anyone else
if
to withdraw
somebody is a
themselves
member
from
of the
violation
committee
as well.
and they stay in the room where the committee is being held, they are still in attendance.
Okay. I would like to enter.
I see that
Okay.
Mr. Mayan, and there's no agenda for this.
We still have to
link.
approve the APU discretionary budget requests. So I'll entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Okay, moved by Lawson.
Second.
And seconded by Foster. Is there any discussion? Okay. Okay, hearing. Okay. Hearing no one desires a debate, I declare the discussion closed.
Unposted meeting.
If there are no objections, okay. So we will take a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
All right. So
I object because this
Richardson.
isn't a posted meeting and is in violation of Brown Act.
Not here. Chavez, Dr. Chavez.
They both had to leave to a district meeting.
Okay. Lilia, are you there? Can you vote yes or no? I can see yours. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes from Chavez. Foster.
Yes.
Okay. Renbarger votes yes. Lawson.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Drazen.
Yes.
Roque.
Yes.
Okay. Kareem. Waduda.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Cooper. Okay. Yes or no?
I object to this violation of
Can we
Brown Act.
proceed? We don't like, we can record what he said in the minutes.
Yep.
This is not
Okay,
a
the
legitimate
motion
meeting.
carries.
We
Thank you,
cannot
everyone.
vote on actions.
Let's move on to presidential updates. Cooper.
We'd be free to discuss out of majority, but as we're in majority and this is not a posted meeting, I cannot share
Okay,
anything.
Tashetta's not
This is
here.
a violation of Brown Act.
I don't have
Y'all
an
know
update
it.
for the Academic Senate. President Johnson gave his update in comments, so you can scroll up to those. Committee reports, CBC.
Can I ask that President Johnson's comments be included in the minutes, though, because they're important. So we should make sure that they're recorded.
Okay, fine. And I will.
Here, actually.
Okay, and I'll actually read out his. Oh, you're here, David.
Yeah, I just got called out of another meeting. What's going on?
Nothing too much. This is just we're here for the presidential reports. There has been an objection to the validity of the meeting because the agenda is not publicly posted.
Okay, duly noted. Keep it moving.
No, it was made by ASMC President Cooper. We have continued on with the business and the agenda. I was about to read out your comments in the chat for your presidential updates.
Okay. I mean, I can do it now, so I'm here.
Okay, sure. If you'd like.
So, after meeting with the chancellor on Monday, we're going to move forward with the RTA's request to advertise for the first 8 positions that were listed on the faculty hiring prioritization list. Give me a second, I'll pull it up. Hold on. Okay, so everybody can see that. So as a reminder, these are 8. Just want to commend again the work and support that I got from the business office, specifically Lillian and Berenice, to assign budgets, to find the money, and justify and verify the money for all these positions. So these are the 8. All right. So we are going to move forward with now again, it's always pending budget approval, but the fact that we've gone through the initial process of working with the interim vice chancellor of finance, and confirming with HR that we do have this money in our budget. This is money that typically was rolled over or swept or what have you. So I think we're on pretty firm footing. We are also moving forward with these classified positions. Same idea. finding the money in existing budgets to fund all the positions, including paying the difference, covering the difference of $17,693 for the VPAS position. So no new money. And it's our intention to also to have Dr. Chavez move forward with the RTA's request to advertise for these positions. So, yeah, it's good news. It's good news.
Thank you.
It's good news.
All right,
Thank you very much. It's awesome.
Yeah. Also, we're in the process. Actually, we'll be leaving in 18 minutes to go back and finish up and I apologize for being late to this meeting, and some of the folks who were on that committee, I kept them a little longer. The interviews ran a little long, so we didn't get here right away. So I wasn't keeping Marie hostage or anything, but it took us a little bit. So we're going to go back and finish our deliberations around that. For those of you who saw the board meeting last night, you know that I put April 27th in my board report. I put April 27th as a target date for the board to consider the hire, which puts us under the gun a little bit because we have to get everything to HR by April 5th. And I understand that next week is spring break, but we're going to do everything we can to get that resolved. So that's my 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to committee reports. CBC. We just kind of went over the APU budget request stuff, so I don't think we have to say anything else on CBC. Let's move on to facilities. I mean, unless you disagree with me, Tina Amboy. Is there anything? Okay, let's go on to the facilities committee then. Brock.
Okay, and I submitted a written report. Just reviewing that report, we had our last facilities / health and safety committee meeting on March 2nd. And at that meeting, we had AECOM present, and they've been present throughout the year. They're working on they sort of work as the moderator between the district and Kitchell regarding the bond spending plan, capital projects, and infrastructure plans. So they again reviewed the infrastructure upgrades that are going to be happening on campus, that there are 7 bundles of projects district-wide, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, doors, general construction, elevators, and roofing. And within each of those bundles are 14 packages of more defined projects. We had a long discussion regarding campus space allocation and future projections of space allocation on campus. The S building is being built out and awaiting, perhaps David might have some information on. We were waiting for the Barbara Lee archive room space needs to be determined, and I think they were waiting on that, and also considering available space in the S building for Division I Dean and Assistant, Fire Science and Life Safety, Math, EMT, Genomics, and a Cybersecurity Lab. So I think that build out project is ready to go forward, but they're sort of waiting on the final details on space allocation there for the different programs and the Barbara Lee archive. And then lastly, the D building scored very high in the at the state in what's called an initial project proposal, an IPP. And it's the only campus project with an IPP. So it's suggested that we move forward with what's called a
final project proposal, FPP, this year to the state so that we keep merit projects in the pipeline. And that would mean that the D building will be submitted, this FPP will be submitted for a renovation project that could perhaps begin in 2025. And we had a discussion about how we came to that point, given that programs moved out of the D building when the S building came online, because the campus was considered overbuilt. And so we started renting space in the D building. But nonetheless, in 2025, that's a couple years away. We don't know what's going to happen. The plan is to close out the A building and ultimately demolish it as the child care building is put up. So the last 5-year plan was updated in 2018, and that is sort of the plan, is to knock down the A building and restructure or renovate the D building. So we've been discussing all that stuff at our meetings, and that's what we talked about.
Okay, thanks for that update. Let's move on to Institutional Effectiveness Committee.
We are continuing the process of working on the new educational master plan and on reviewing possible changes to the mission statement. We had at Flex Day, there were breakout rooms for four. We broke up into 4 different breakout rooms, and each of them came up with proposals that are going to be, I think, sent out shortly on surveys to the campus community to get people's feedback on them.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the Technology Committee. I guess Derek isn't here. Let's move on to the Accreditation Committee. So I received a report from Hillary. Did you want to say anything about?
Do you want me to read it, or you want to just submit it?
Yeah, we can just submit it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Are there any announcements? Okay. Hearing no announcements, then the meeting is adjourned.
Cooper has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Cooper.
Yeah, I've got an announcement. There's a link in the chat citing.
In light of that, I make a motion to adjourn.
In violation of AB 22257
Okay.
amended and
Meeting is
enacted
adjourned.
As of January 1st, 2019.
Thank you, everyone. So we should be better about posting our agenda.
This shouldn't be happening
Publicly in the future, but we'll just have to do that in the future. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tom.
The recording has stopped.
I'll get everyone that YouTube link as usual once this is posted.